A prosecutor always builds evidence on both sides of his argument. He wants to know which is the stronger case. So the fact that Robert Mueller identified these 10 instances where he investigated or examined whether a crime of obstruction was committed, that's not a problem in and of itself. It's not even a problem that there's, I guess, tallies on both sides of the ledger, arguments for obstruction or against obstruction within these instances. That's a normal thing. But if, given all that evidence, a prosecutor does not choose to levy charges, if he doesn't feel like he can establish enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime was committed, that's the part that we focus on. And that's really where, in my opinion, Mueller dropped the ball and played into the partisan hands of the left here, because he gave them that one little phrase, and they're going to use that to try to bring impeachment charges in Congress against the president.
And some of the evidence that he actually cites on the side of the ledger for obstruction, and I think you were right to note in your opening monologue, by the way, how the goalposts have moved. All of a sudden, collusion is gone with a puff of smoke, even though that's what we've been talking about for 2 years, not obstruction, and how one can talk about obstruction in a clear way when the underlying crime, which presumably is the corrupt motive for the kind of obstruction that Mueller was looking at, that underlying crime was not there. Look, legally you can be charged with obstruction without an underlying crime, but there does seem to be something sort of fundamentally wrong with looking at the president's reactions and to being investigated for 2 years on something as heinous as basically being a traitor to his country, right? Traitorously colluding with a hostile foreign power as obstruction is a little bit strange in itself. But one of the instances that Mueller cites as possible evidence for obstruction I find particularly disturbing, which is a conversation where Trump lays out views about Russia that I think are, for the record, are totally naive and stupid, right? Ideas about letting Russia have Crimea in Ukraine, ideas of how to make Russia, a good partner to the United States. Look, I think these are terrible foreign policy ideas, but I wasn't elected. Donald Trump was. And to cite his foreign policy views as some kind of evidence for obstruction is a line that really shouldn't be crossed. We cannot criminalize the policy decisions of the president, particularly when it's a bunch of unelected bureaucrats who are doing this investigation. At the end of the day, those bureaucrats, even in law enforcement, in fact, some cases, especially in law enforcement, have to report to the political branches. They have to report to the president. Otherwise, we have no control as American voters over what they do and the enormous powers that they wield. So the idea that unelected bureaucrats would, characterize the policy views of the president as evidence of a crime, that is a scary, high-level thing that Americans should take a deep breath and think about, no matter how much you dislike Donald Trump, and no matter how much you think his views might be, wrong or stupid. I mean, I just said I don't agree with his views at all. I think they're naive and dangerous. But to criminalize policy positions of a president and to cite them as evidence that he somehow committed a crime, obstruction of justice, that is a line that we really, really should think about before we cross.